It shouldn't be so challenging to play older video games. Just about every other medium of media in the world offers easy solutions for experiencing older and retro stuff. Do you want to listen to a record from the 70s or 80s? They still sell new turntables and offer the music in just about every other format. Generally, it's pretty easy. Video games, on the other hand, are a minefield of legal IP nonsense over characters that have been thrown around for the better part of 30 years. 30 years of people acquiring Bubsy. This is capitalism.
Were you expecting someone else?
This is the second time we're doing this, and well, I have something to address. I was wrong. That video is wrong. About half of those games are no longer stuck on older consoles. Rocket Knight Adventures, Golden Sun, Baten Kaitos, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, heck, even Jeanne d'Arc on the PSP. We've even got Shadows of the Damned on the horizon. I failed. So we're gonna do it again. Round 2. More good video games stuck on older consoles because I'd really like to play Mech Assault 2 Lone Wolf again without hooking up my Xbox 360. I don't even know if it'll turn on. It might be too dusty. So yo, it's Austin, and today we're gonna be trying this again. I, like many of y'all, have been playing video games for several decades, and some of the older stuff is kind of hard to get going today. You either have to hook up an old console or tinker around on the tricky World Wide Web, which I'm learning that the newer generation's having a harder time pulling that off. That, and no one should be required to pull out a dusty Wii U just to play Twilight Princess HD. Seriously, why is that stuck? Nintendo, we'll come back to you, but before we get started, I got a word from today's sponsor, Ray Neo. This here is the Ray Neo Air 2S, and these are smart AR glasses that can be used to watch television or play video games on a giant screen anytime, anywhere. Hook it up to your phone, a tablet, a Steam Deck with a USB-C cable, or even a Nintendo Switch with a Joy Dock and get to playing on a massive screen inside the glasses. These are sporting 120 Hz, 1080p resolution. It's gonna look like a 201-inch screen on the inside. It is big. If you've ever wanted to see what your games look like really close up, the Ray Neo Air 2S is a great way to do it. I think the glasses fit nicely, and they're adjustable so they'll fit on all sorts of face shapes. They're light, I think they fit well, and the sound coming out of these things is actually pretty good. I was surprised. There's 2 screens you're gonna be looking at, one inside each of the lenses, but when you put them together, it feels like you're looking at a giant immersive screen. Look, sometimes you just wanna kick back and fully plant yourself inside of whatever video game you're playing or TV show you're watching, and the Ray Neo Air 2Ss are a great way to do it. Just make sure to let your roommates and family know while you're sitting alone on the couch with your sunglasses on. Oh, no, I'm gaming. So, if you want to pick up the Ray Neo Air 2S, the pair that hit Amazon US's #1 bestseller in smart glasses, click the link down in the description. Thanks to Ray Neo for sponsoring today's video, but for now, we need to hop back from the future. Old games, old consoles, even some really old publishers. No one quite gatekeeps their old software quite like Nintendo. I am so glad that the Disney-style Nintendo Vault seems to have stopped being a thing. There was a little while there where Nintendo had released a few games for a limited amount of time for, in my opinion, no real reason, and then they quickly stopped. But have since resorted to games being Nintendo Switch Online exclusive, which isn't that much better. Previously, we had talked about Golden Sun, and yeah, Golden Sun being back is sick, but also, I just want to give y'all like $5 or $10 and be done with it. Granted, it's dope that both Super Mario RPG and Thousand Year Door got full-on remakes and remasters on the Switch. Sure, they're a full $60, but still, it beats trying to plug in a Gamecube and failing to find a composite video slot on the back of a TV.
Where is it? Where is it?
Nintendo's getting a little better about the whole preservation of video games deal, but they still got a ways to go. Point in case, the whole deactivation of several digital game stores. 3DS and Wii U, barely knew ya. I assume it'll happen to the Switch one day, but for now, it pains me that they've left behind so many cool classics. I'm just saying, if The Last of Us can get a remake and remaster 3 consoles in a row, I should be able to play custom Robo on something made in the last 20 years. F-Zero GX, Rogue Squadron, Extreme G, Ever Oasis. There's plenty of old games on Nintendo consoles and portables I'd love to see playable on the Switch, or Switch 2, but only one of those is a remake so good it deserves a second port. Punch Out for the Wii. Why is this stuck on the Wii? Punch-Out is a simple concept. You play as that one guy from Smash Brothers and you punch. It's boxing, except instead of being super realistic and filled with slow motion replays, we've got an incredibly cartoonish atmosphere that is filled with life. All of the characters are so animated, have a bunch of personality. It's like Street Fighter, but goofier and a little less. The NES original has you going stage to stage trying to find weaknesses while being shown static images of your opponents, but this time you get slideshows, you get statistics, some of which are really unfortunate. Bro, I had to give up after 2. Punch-Out Wii was actually outsourced and developed by Next Level Games, so you might recognize as the people who made Captain America Super Soldier and Luigi's Mansion 3. 2 incredibly different games, I know, but this is smack dab in the middle of their gamography and is, in my opinion, one of the best on that console. I'm usually not one for motion controls, especially from the Wii era where it was 50-50 if it'd work or not, but Punch-Out feels incredibly fluid. It's responsive. Imagining this on a Switch or Switch 2 with Joy-Cons or a better Switch 2 Joy-Cons sounds great. They could easily bring this over or even do a sequel, and I hope they do because Punch-Out for the Wii is a pretty dang good game stuck on an old console. Wait, the Wii's almost 20? Help. Speaking of the Wii and being portless, how about that Operation Rainfall? Like 2/3 of it. Anyone remember that? Back in 2011, a bunch of people got together and successfully spread the word about a few Wii JRPGs that had no localization plans. Fans wanted these 3 games, and boy, they were gonna make it happen. These were Xenoblade Chronicles, The Last Story, and Pandora's Tower. Everyone knows about Xenoblade these days, as it's become one of Nintendo's flagship franchises. The other 2, a little less so. Mostly because Nintendo didn't even do it themselves. The Last Story was the last real Mistwalker game until Phantasy came out recently. This was, in my opinion, Final Fantasy series creator Hironobu Sakaguchi's final attempt to make another hugely popular RPG franchise that didn't quite pan out. A shame, because it's pretty solid. It's got this interesting and maybe lackluster combat system where you do damage by running into people, as they were trying to make it a little more action-oriented. The story's a bit generic and extremely British, a common thread in Operation Rainfall.
Now it's rhyme time!
And absolutely a solid RPG in a console lacking them. I mean, what else do we got? Arcry's Fantasia?
You're hurt. Let me heal you with magic.
Yes, please.
The Last Story is a pretty dope game that should get another chance on a non-Wii console. Lastly, for the Rainfall, we got Pandora's Tower. I don't really hear many people talk about Pandora's Tower, probably because it's considered the weakest of the bunch. It's sitting at a 73 on Metacritic, and despite Operation Rainfall's insistence, it didn't sell very well. I mean, both it and The Last Story had to be published by Xseed instead of Nintendo. I guess it doesn't help when a majority of the reviews from the time say things like, it'd be nice if the graphics were better, or the Wii has technical limitations. Like, yeah, duh. Pandora's Tower was originally published by Nintendo and developed by Ganbarian, the people behind Jump Ultimate Stars, and a breadth of licensed anime games. In fact, this was one of their only releases not tied to some sort of anime, and I kinda wish we could have seen more. It's super unique. Climb the towers, save Elena from a messed up curse. Or not, that depends on your choices and how much time you waste. There's a bunch of endings. Alls I know, you gotta eat some meat with the grippers out. Yep. It does feel a bit dated in that you're stuck to predetermined camera angles and combat is a little basic, but I love the implementation of the Wiimote. You do a lot of swinging and grapple hooking as you scale this bad boy. It's very narrative light for a majority of the experience, and I can see how that turned people off. Pandora's Tower is a very video game-ass video game, closer to a PlayStation 2 or Gamecube action romp than what the cover may look like, and absolutely something I could see Nintendo being hesitant to localize. However, I still think it's pretty cool. It's dark, kinda creepy, has a minimum of storytelling, and I could see a little port, remaster, or enhanced version with less motion controls doing wonders. Heck, it's even got decent voice acting.
You're forbidden to eat meat, aren't you? Now this little morsel is beast flesh.
Pandora's Tower is cool, you should play it. But enough hipster nonsense, it's time for a heavy hitter. Nintendo needs to stop messing around and port some old Gamecube classics. I'm talking 1080 Avalanche, I'm talking WarioWare Inc. Mega Party games, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance because it's still regularly over $200 boxed. Oh, also, Mario Kart Double Dash. No, I'm serious. I don't want to play Mario Kart 8. I want to play Mario Kart Double Dash. That was my favorite, and I'll tell you why. Mario Kart Double Dash does something you barely see in racing games. It's co-op. It allows two people to race as one. The closest I've seen any game get to that is Team Sonic Racing, where you and two others work together to get to the front of the pack. That game is pretty decent, but Mario Kart Double Dash is the peak of that mountain. Maybe I'm not MK pilled enough, but I always saw Double Dash as the best in the series. It's got a fun soundtrack, it's got memorable courses, and the two-person karts made it really unique up against every other release in the series. Nintendo wasn't trying to make the next number entry, but instead try something different, and I think they succeeded. Overall, I think Mario Kart 64 is probably a bit more memorable with the course selection and audiences, but there's something about DD that hooks me. It was also the first game I got to try GameCube LAN with, which blew me away as a teen. That was until Halo 2, a couple Xboxes, 3 folding tables, and a dozen liters of Mountain Dew came around, and probably ruined my life. It's cool that Nintendo wants to put a ton of tracks across the series into their newest game, but I would love if they acknowledged the GameCube more. One day I'll be able to play this or say The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords Adventure again, just hopefully without the mess of wires required to do so. There's no category of video games where games become stuck more than licensed ones, and usually that's okay. I don't think anyone out there is clamoring for a port of Fantastic Four Rise of Silver Surfer, which if you want to see me talk about, you can do it here. At the same time, I would love to be able to kick back on my couch, pick up a controller, press a few buttons, and be playing Bucky O'Hare.
Bucky! Captain Bucky O'Hare! Mutants and aliens and toads beware!
Aren't familiar? That's okay. I don't think many are. In fact, considering his official wiki page features the cover of the video game instead of his comics or cartoon, Bucky O'Hare is distilled down to its core, a kid's cartoon that failed to grab an audience. Which is crazy because the entire concept was conjured up by Michael Golden and Larry Hama, the latter of which responsible for a little indie project known as G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. This cartoon, originally an 80s comic, had a bunch of furries coming down from space to hang out with some kid with activist parents or something.
Like making sure that when you grow up, there are whales and owls and an ozone layer. Oh, David, the rally. We've got to run.
There's a whole conflict between the United Animals Federation and the Toad Empire, who were described on their wiki page as consumerist, which is really funny considering this thing was a comic book, toy line, cartoon, and of course, video game. The show itself, it seems okay. They clearly wanted that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles audience. Bucky doesn't have much personality besides being a captain, and the show zips between a tiny child being bullied and a green rabbit shooting lasers in space. Well, after that initial 80s comic run, we got a single season, a toy line that was canceled after the first line, and because it was too late to cancel, 2 different video games. And who better to make a few games aping on the concept of anthropomorphic animal teams than Konami? You'd get a lot of licensed games thrown at developers and then probably into a wall here in the 80s and 90s. However, it was studios like Capcom and Konami that would take your IP and toss it into the quality stratosphere. Bucky O'Hare for both the Nintendo Entertainment System and arcade. Question: have you ever played The Simpsons arcade, X-Men, Sunset Riders, Turtles in Time? Well, you're looking at it just with a slightly more green aesthetic. I do think it's pretty cool that they got the original voice actors for some cutscenes.
Well, we managed to stop the climate converter.
Even if it looks a little off.
You saved us all, Willie.
This is, as you'd expect, a quarter-devouring beat-em-up where you run with the Anthro Squad, blasting toads and doing whatever Bucky O'Hare does. However, I didn't actually know this one existed because I wanted to talk about the other one, Bucky O'Hare for the NES, spearheaded by Masato Maegawa, the guy who founded Treasure. Yeah, Gunstar Heroes, Ikaruga, Warrior World, Treasure. Bucky O'Hare is pretty freaking good. if you don't mind dying a ton. As you can probably guess, given the people who put this together, Bucky O'Hare is a punishment platformer in the same vein as Mega Man. It is very easy to die, and you're going to, a lot. However, it's actually built to be forgiving by giving you unlimited continues that'll start you back in the current act, which is usually the same screen. You will die, but you will have a good time. Except during the Blue Planet, that one's just mean. The Mega Man bit comes into play as you unlock new characters with different abilities, each of which can charge to do special things. Bucky can jump higher, the robot can jetpack for a bit, the duck can crawl on walls, and the cat has a movable laser bomb thing. All of these can become stronger by finding power-ups in the stages. Bucky's not the best from Konami during this era, but it sure is a sleeper that I think holds up in several ways, especially some of that music. What, you expected different from freaking 90s Konami? Get real. Unfortunately, both this and the arcade port are stuck back on platforms nearly 30 years old, and that's a massive shame. However, Konami's kind of become the poster child of supporting older games lately with collections regardless of them being licensed IPs or not, so, you know, manifesting some sort of Konami NES era and or arcade collection. That way we can finally have a modern way to play Aliens, The Simpsons, X-Men, Cowboys of Moo Mesa, G.I. Joe, Sunset Riders, all the Tiny Toon Adventures games, roller games, and, while I'm at it, totally unrelated, every single Ganbare Goemon game. Surely that's not too much to ask for.
Sound great?
Shifting gears a bit, but keeping things licensed a bit longer, I've brought up the next thing probably 100 times, but I've never talked about them at length. Developed by High Moon Studios prior to the dreaded Call of Duty mines, if you haven't played Transformers War for Cybertron, you gotta find a way. And there was, before it got delisted. What are we doing? Transformers War for Cybertron and its sequel, Fall of Cybertron, aren't just good licensed games, they're fantastic releases that were totally overlooked. Heck, the sequel allegedly only sold 105,000 copies in its first month, which is depressing. Transformers needs no introduction. Despite being Japanese in origin, you either know it as an extremely American 80s cartoon or an extremely American Michael Bay blow-off-your-face live-action film series starring the likes of Shia LaBeouf and Linkin Park. But you should think of these. War for Cybertron was a fully co-op third-person shooter campaign where you play through a long story as both Autobots and Decepticons. You start as the baddies getting your evil plan together before then switching to the Autobots to defend against that assault. It's actually a super interesting concept as it had you play both sides of the conflict with some friends. I'm using past tense now because this entire experience is gone and you can't play online anymore, so that's cool. The style, as you can see, is a bit darker. It treads a line between the goofy, bright cartoony skins and the crazy, over-designed mess of metal from the Michael Bay films. I myself love the Daniel Warren Johnson comic book treatment where they're pulling out rainmakers and drawing a mid-transformation. Look at this freak. Speaking of mid-transformation, I think they forgot to put Bumblebee's arm in this game. You okay, buddy? With Warren Fall of Cybertron, however, this darker look brings in the only real negative I have about this, and that it kind of looks the same for 80% of the time. The colors are very muted, even from the concept art and the character selection. It's a lot of dark hallways with vague future tech machines. It is Cybertron after all. I'm not expecting this scenery of like Visions of Mana or anything, but it does get a little repetitive to look at after 6 or 10 hours. But you know it doesn't. Blasting, double jumping, transforming, and murder crushing your way through thousands of Decepticons and or Autobots. Playing this co-op campaign when it came out was an absolute treat. It's quick, snappy, the shooting feels good, and all the weapons have a distinct kick to them. The zoom-in pistols have good feel, special abilities are great, throwing your car into first gear and ripping around corners while blasting dudes is exciting. I was just playing Space Marine 2 right before recording this for this video, and it just reminded me of how fun this era of video games really was. You didn't need a lot of big RPG mechanics. You don't need to to rope me in for 200 hours and 3 years of season passes. I just want a solid co-op shooter campaign taking place in a thing that I like that'll run me 2 to 3 playthroughs and I'm set. The sequel, Fall of Cybertron, doesn't have a co-op campaign, which is a shame, but instead a fun multiplayer mode where you get to make your own Transformer. I played this thing a ton when it came out and it really showed that back then licensed games could be awesome. It was a standout in the middle of the Sega MCU era where these things were awful. They were standouts in High Moon's career. Heck, the sequel even got re-released on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One before then being removed from all digital store shelves back in 2018, a mere 2 years of it existing. But with Activision stepping away from licensed games in 2020, all the servers were taken offline, so both of these experiences are now shells of what they used to be. Insert joke about the first Transformers movie. Thankfully, you can mod the PC release to play online if you have it on Steam already, but it is an absolute shame that both of these are in the state they're in. There's been a whole thing about whether or not they can come back, with the game rumored to have been lost, to then briefly appearing on the Xbox Digital Store, so hopefully one day these can come back and be properly preserved. The Cybertron High Moon duology deserves your time, and currently you can only really give it a shot through illicit means or a used physical copy, or a digital key that costs way too much.
Why?
But even then, that old experience just isn't there. Microsoft, if you do one thing with Activision, make it this.
Developers!
If they do come back though, y'all gotta help it sell more than 100K. How does this happen in the 2010s at the height of those movies' popularity?
I am directly below the enemy scrotum.
You know what I like? Cars, specifically video game cars. And you don't typically see video games with them make their way to another generation. It could be for any reason too, like licensed music, car IPs, the studio not existing anymore, or just being kind of outdated. I don't think many people are clamoring to play Project Gotham Racing 1, but they might be asking about Burnout 3 Takedown. I know I am. Criterion's Burnout 3 Takedown is still one of, if not the best arcade racer of all time. Paradise is cool and all, but Takedown, that's where it's at. If you're younger and you have no idea what a Burnout is, I guess I understand, because the last real entry was in 2008, because no one cares about Burnout Crash, so I guess we should explain. Burnout is a racing game where you put just as much effort into causing destruction as you do the race. You go fast, you do big crash, and watch a crazy amount of particle damage fly around. The leap from Burnout 2 to 3, even just on the PlayStation 2 and Xbox, was nuts. Everything was shiny, the models had so many breaking points. It was always fun to watch things happen in slow motion, and best of all, the racing was good. It said nah to any kind of racing sim like Gran Turismo and went full on Cruising USA, which was a perfect decision. There's tons of locales to visit, levels with branching paths, and your first time doing a lap through any stage feels like a fight for survival. The big thing I loved as a teenager, which led to tons of rentals, was the crash mode. You do a little puzzle style thing with your vehicle and attempt to cause the most destruction possible with a numerical dollar attached to it. Something often replicated but never fully eclipsed, like with Pain.
I'm too handsome.
Oh, Pain, you tried. I imagine one of the main things holding them back from re-releasing old games like this is the inclusion of licensed music. Hell of a track list though. We got Franz Ferdinand, Jimmy Eat World, Rise Against, Yellow Card, and even the debut of I'm Not Okay by My Chemical Romance nearly 3 weeks before it hit radio. What? Oh, and don't forget DJ Stryker.
Single race, you and 5 others, quickest to the finish wins. Just what I like, nice and simple.
Gee, thanks for the helpful hints there. These days, Criterion Games does whatever EA wants them to do, it seems. EA brought them on for a few Need for Speeds and Battlefields, but they haven't got a full swing at the premier arcade racer for over 15 years now. They recently put out Need for Speed Unbound, which shares a bit in common, but it never really fully reaches that final gear. I would love if EA would stop being cowards and port some of their old racing games. Burnout 3 Takedown deserves it. Have you ever picked up a totally random game, something maybe completely out of your wheelhouse, in an attempt to find, like a new interest? Well, if not, I highly recommend it. I really like racing games. I don't really know where that came from either. You just never know when something's gonna click. That's how I got started painting miniatures lately for Marvel Crisis Protocol. Baby's first 40K, it's a lot of fun. J-Dog, let's play again. Now, on the same side as the EA coin, how's about something like Need for Speed Underground 2 as well? I mean, look, Need for Speed is great. It's been around since I was a kid. I remember playing Hot Pursuit on my friend's dad's computer and thinking we were the coolest guys around. Hot Pursuit 2 was also great. Need for Speed treads a line in between your Burnouts and Gran Turismo, where it gives you more of a lighthearted, fast-paced experience without going full simulation, and that's a big sweet spot for me. It's why I love Forza Horizon. Need for Speed Underground 2, to me, was perfect. It featured this big open world with customizable cars, nighttime street racing, obnoxious neon lights, and a goofy story. This is one of those games that everyone had, and I mean that literally. Apparently it sold over 11 million copies worldwide, which also means it outsold every single game on the Gamecube. People do be loving Need for Speed, which makes it even more of a shame that they can't seem to replicate this success. Need for Speed has had a time since then, and their underground-inspired sequels always fail to hit. Instead, we're getting weird campaigns inspired by Fast and the Furious with QuickTime events. Need for Speed The Run was weird. Props to them for at least trying new ideas with the series, but honestly, just bring back Underground 2. Just throw it on the PS5 or Switch, don't even gotta improve it much. That game rules, and we all deserve to play it again. Now, how about car video games without racing? The dreaded genre that's practically died out, vehicle combat games. Your Twisted Metals, Star Wars Demolitions, Cell Damages. Only half of those are even good, but I sure love me some Vigilante 8 Second Offense. Twisted Metal clone? Maybe, but a fun one. Activision and Luxoflux, the people behind, okay, yeah, that's kind of unfortunate, decided that they were gonna do the vehicle combat thing, and do what they did. Vigilante 8 is the goofy cousin to Twisted Metal. You get two paths in the vehicle combat genre, one dark and edgy, and the other this. Plays out how you'd think. You trek through different biomes, a lot of which are homages to 70s action and exploitation films. It's wacky, over the top, and the physics on the cars reflect that. You wanna bounce around? Too bad, you don't get a choice. You can also get power-ups to change how your vehicles function, like Diddy Kong Racing, propellers to float on water, skis so you can move around on snow, or even just flying around. Just watch out for the two-frame gator attack. Vigilante 8 Second Offense, like its predecessor, doesn't take itself very seriously, and that's to its credit. It's shameless in what it is, a clone of another popular game from the time, has built-in cheats, split-screen multiplayer, and everything you'd want from one of these. Just with garbage men who reveal themselves to be aliens. Yeah, look at this guy. Weirdly, this would be all for Vigilante 8 as a franchise until 2008, when I got an Xbox 360 exclusive thing called Vigilante 8 Arcade. It wasn't a remake or a remaster, it was a whole different project, and it just failed to hit those same highs. Is it because in 2008, car combat is practically a dead genre? Maybe. But also, Activision should bring these games to modern platforms so more people can experience them. I mean, look, I just read right now that Skygunner's hitting the PlayStation Store. Anything can happen. Dreams can become real. Vigilante 8 is pretty weird and wacky, there's no doubt about that, but we can get a whole lot weirder. Whip out that Nintendo 64 and let's head on over to the space station Silicon Valley. This thing is bizarre. What? I have a hard time describing Space Station Silicon Valley, but let's give it a shot. What happens when you give the future developers of Grand Theft Auto, DMA Design, the mission to create an N64 platformer and probably a bag of crack? You get Space Station Silicon Valley, a game where you play as a microchip possessing animals who may or may not be dead to do platforming. We follow a robot, Evo, that's you, and Dan Danger, as you're sent on a mission to do something. It's an incredibly vague vague setup, but one that leads to the theme park of platforming levels with different puzzle challenges, or spending 15 minutes looking at walkthroughs because it can be a little obfuscated. Space Station Silicon Valley is incredibly British, both in design and humor. It also ends up being one of the more unique games from this era with the robot animal switching. You can be a dog, a sheep, a husky, even penguins. Except, we're gonna be strapping wheels and rockets to them. Alter that DNA, mouse got wheels. Turtles are becoming tanks, and the walrus, well, he's got a pair of sunglasses. Look, I'm just saying that's pretty cool. Yeah, same. So we're necromancing animals with microchips and collecting power cells in order to move to more stages. Some animals play better than others, some stages have a lot more gusto than others, but it's absolutely a cult classic from a time where you would be getting these every other week. But rather than leaning into the sassy mascot, it just decides to be goofy, lets you play as all sorts of animals and give you a few chuckles from the in-between moments. I love that emulation's letting us see those far LOD models on enemies, like this fox. It's literally a rectangle. Yo, what's good? Space Station Silicon Valley is great. It was highly reviewed at launch and sold like absolute crap, so unfortunately it's stuck on the Nintendo 64 and technically the PlayStation 1. There's a PS1 port that came out a few years later by a developer called Runecraft that was retitled Evo's Space Adventures and only released in Europe. How do I say this? They it up big time. It's barely recognizable. The camera angles are completely different, so you can't see the full stages, and I am unsure of how you change a game fundamentally this much. They quite literally took a well-loved cult classic and bodied it into an unrecognizable state. So much so that you can't even see how many collectibles you've gotten on whatever stage you're in a collect-a-thon. How do you mess that up? Regardless, the original Space Station Silicon Valley is a good time and is worth a shot. I don't think we'll be seeing it ported anytime soon, considering its initial bomb and the fact that Rockstar seems a bit preoccupied these days. But hey, maybe we can get them to swing this and say Body Harvest at the same time for the 15 people, including me, who will pop off over it. Who's with me? There's earnestly a ton of weird games that I would love to see make it out of the old console dimension. Maybe that's because I grew up playing Sega and PlayStation, and we would always rent games, and the most popular stuff was always checked out. So instead of, say, Banjo-Kazooie, which was always checked out, we would have to pick up something like Mischief Makers. And for real, where the hell is Mischief Makers? Say hello again, Treasure. It's time for one of your strangest games to date. I cannot believe that Mischief Makers never made its way to the Wii Virtual Console or even a port anywhere. It's one of the only true Nintendo 64 exclusives out there, and it's an absolute blast to play. But I guess it makes sense considering it's technically NX and not Nintendo. Look, I like me a quick game. I don't need something to be 10 to 20 hours long. Sometimes I want a game I can sit down with and beat in an afternoon. Maybe two. Some of my favorites of all time are Rocket Knight Adventures, Streets of Rage 2, Super Mario World. Give me a weird gimmick, a memorable setting, and something I can replay without any hassle. Mischief Makers is exactly that. You take control of Marina Lightyears, a small robot maid with big punchin' fists. Then you gotta go save your creator, the slimy Professor Theo, by running through 2.5D platforming stages in what plays like a villain of the week type of deal. It's also, as a bonus, one of two games that let me hold the Nintendo 64 controller like a normal human being would. This and Tetrasphere. D-pad, let's go. What even are the other games? I can't remember. So the whole shtick is this. Marina can grab and throw and jump. She can hold on to things, shake it, and can yeet it at enemies. The controls can be a bit of a pain to get used to because you need to utilize double taps or the C buttons in order to boost, and sometimes a lot of precision's needed. But it's worth getting used to because of how fun this one is. The story's like a full 90s comedy anime. You're fighting furry Sentai squads, you've got goofy, massive-eyed anime characters, and there's even a random athletics contest midway through. There's tons of variety that kicks in too as you're suddenly riding an ostrich or engaging in the very typical Treasure-style boss fights. Just make sure to give them a little. Reviews from the time were pretty unfair to Mischief Makers. In the late 90s, we were pushing 3D, so anything not pushing that envelope was looked at lesser than. This thing was getting 6 out of 10s, which I thought was crazy. This was Treasure doing their thing in the only way that they knew how. Although they did lean a bit more into exploration with levels and using Clancer faces on everything to do platforming, or doing basic math. Whew, almost failed. I love Mischief Makers, but unfortunately, both Treasure and NX never came back to it. They did make Marina playable in Rakugaki Showtime, but that's about it. This is probably the most underrated Nintendo 64 game out there. I don't hear people yapping off about it, and if square-enix decides to make a collection of their classic titles, this needs to be on there. Screw the RPGs, Illusion of Gaia, whatever. We as a society need a little shake. There's endless weird games from the 90s and 2000s that are stuck on older consoles. Stuff I really like too. Astal is one of those early Sega Saturn platformers that was really showcasing what 32 bits could do with 2D visuals, and it's gorgeous. In fact, the whole Sega Saturn is filled with games that have yet to be recognized outside of the year 1996. The fact that Panzer Dragoon Saga is just sitting there for decades while being notoriously one of the rarest and most sought after games is wild. Mysteria is a pretty cool underrated JRPG. Dragon Force is freaking Dragon Force. The Japanese exclusive Princess Crown was the precursor to what we see with Vanillaware nowadays, and Super Tempo is the follow-up to one of the strangest 32X releases out there. But it's all stuff that deserves to make a comeback, and that's just on the Saturn. Outside that, we got the Beautiful Joe series, one of Capcom's most notorious franchises from the PlayStation 2 and GameCube era that's been left in the dust. Nintendo's got a ton of other series too, like the other Excite games, like Truck. Yeah, remember Excitebot's Trick Racing? No? You should. There's a lot of smaller games like this out there, and we'll get to them one day, but for now, I've only got one more I want to talk about, and you've been hearing it for years. It's something that I've considered making a full video on for years, but I wasn't really sure if it made sense. Mostly because it's extremely archaic by today or even yesterday's standards, but screw it, let's do it anyway. The Dreamcast just turned 25 a few days ago from writing this, and I didn't have anything prepared, so I think you know what's coming. One of my favorite video games of all time is Phantasy Star Online, and it is an absolute shame that Sega hasn't done anything with it. Phantasy Star Online, PSO, a game incredibly ahead of its time and probably one of the first MMOs out there for a lot of people. Probably because it literally was the first console MMORPG. The Dreamcast sure was in the future. They were advertising full broadband net play on this thing. In '99, you could hook up to the net, potentially hog phone lines, and play several video games online on one of the loudest consoles of all time. Seriously, I always think these things are gonna break. I recently got a modded Dreamcast so I can play this and whatever I want on my HD TV, so there's that, but there's nothing quite like playing this online back in the day. To distill this down all the way, Phantasy Star Online was Sega and Sonic Team's attempt to turn their Final Fantasy equivalent into a big online game, something that hadn't really been done before. You could connect with others from your Dreamcast online into different lobbies and go a dungeon crawling. The basis in the story is simple, almost inconsequential due to its scale. You are a space colonist aboard the spaceship Pioneer 2. The planet you're gonna take, Ragol, is filled with all sorts of nonsense and enemies, and it's up for you to fix that. Eventually, Dark Faults appears and is like, people are bad, yada yada, you beat the bad guys, and space is no longer the final frontier. 95% of the characters are other people you play with, and they're all created characters with no personality beyond spamming messages and chat, but that's not why we played this. We played this because it was a way to go on an adventure with friends from in front of your couch. MMORPGs were mostly a PC affair and kinda still are, so this really hit a sweet spot for me and a bunch of people I've talked to.
You can even build a common front in real time with players on the other side of the Earth 20,000 kilometers away.
I love this early commercial implying that 6 billion people were playing. Yeah, marketing. The aesthetic was that futuristic space fantasy that only Phantasy Star and the Genesis had. The music was dynamic in each zone and incredibly good. I can still hear the lobby themes playing in my head to this day. However, and the big asterisk here, being an online MMO released in the year 2000, I'm sure you can imagine how the combat goes.
All right, sick.
Yeah, it's minimalist, to say the least. Phantasy Star Online isn't gonna be winning any awards for gripping gameplay, but I took that 3-hit combo and 6-button hotbar and ran with it for hundreds of hours. It's not particularly long. All of the episodes can be beaten in a few days, and that'll just leave you upping the difficulty and grinding out levels till like 200. The end game is just more of the same, and playing it for the first time today might actually be a bit jarring. But there really was nothing else quite like Phantasy Star Online. Like, And actually, Phantasy Star Universe and PSO2 aren't even close. They pull a lot more from modern MMOs, especially the free-to-play PSO2, and it's crazy how much I'd rather play the original. Only hating a little bit. Thankfully, the PC version of this game, Blueburst, has a dedicated group of people running different private servers, so it's totally playable on modern hardware via workarounds, but I sure would love it if Sega acknowledged the actual game. I don't know if there's enough of an audience to make it happen on modern consoles, but a modern HD port with a couple of polished odds and ends would be something I would absolutely replay. Some of the private servers regularly have several hundred people playing it, so it's not like it's totally dead. But that's the thing with the concept of online-only games. Once they're gone, they're gone. A copy of PSO for the Dreamcast or Gamecube will run you $30 to $70 depending on the platform, and the split screen is absolutely worth a shot with some friends. There's really nothing like Phantasy Star Online out there with its bizarre, janky, early 2000s self, and for the people who were there, you know it too. Is Phantasy Star Online worth playing? I'm not sure. I grew up with the NES and Genesis, so I'm crusty as hell. But if you want to go back, or maybe for the first time, go and experience a world unlike any other, it is absolutely worth it. Sega, please listen. I don't want PSO2.
Phantasy Star Online. The gaming revolution comes in the year 2000. The door to the future. The door to freedom.
So there you have it, another batch of good video games stuck on old consoles. It's getting kind of hard for me to accept that the Dreamcast is 25 years old, but I guess this is how it is. Getting old and realizing that the new childhood is Roblox, and the free-to-play flavor of the month. If you liked today's video, check out the sponsor, Ray Neo. It'll help the channel out a ton. Or if you'd like to support us directly, you can head on over to the Patreon and become a backer. With that, you'll also gain access to the Patreon Discord, where I frequently remind people that I am not a Nintendo kid. Mario's fine, I guess. Sonic, though. Oh yeah. You can also buy a t-shirt over at the Pixel Empire, toss us a subscription, a comment, or just tell your friend down the street about us. Hopefully they remain your friend. Anyways, I'm gonna head out for now. If it sounds a little different, it's because I moved to a new place despite this looking virtually the same. I've been Austin, and catch me next time when we talk about some games I hope none of y'all heard about. Or maybe forgot, I don't know. Thank you so much for watching. Special Patreon shout out to Aaron Kwolek, Alfred Correa, Benna Oswald, Blackfoot Ferret, Blake Thomas, Charles Rosner, Cheeks, Chris Shelton, DX Buster, Dylan Snyder, Fragile Traveler, Hey Quiggles, Idlevice, J Roosh, Jacoby Fitzpatrick, Kevin Zanowski, Platinum Rose, Pacha Bear, Randall Bentley, Rare Find It, Ryan Talbert, and Vox. Thank you all so much for the generous support. Y'all, I am fully moved into this new place. I have my own office, so I've been thinking about maybe doing a couple streams in the Discord while I'm recording footage. Let me know if that's something you want to see, and let me know in the Discord, because I have to play a crap ton of games for this channel, and some of them I'd rather not do alone. Anyways, I'm gonna keep painting, keep playing some TCG, keep playing video games, because the Plucky Squire just came out today, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye bye.